It's interesting because I do think there are signs that you're getting better at a game that aren't entirely clear as you're trying to learn. You know, Pokemon Unite specifically is a MOBA, and MOBA is a hard genre for people, especially if you've never played a game like this before. I remember learning this playing, you know, Warcraft 3 customs and League of Legends and things like that. It's a tough genre and you're gonna get kicked around a lot, but there are some signs that you are getting better that you may not recognize. Hi everybody, Jake, your resident content cowboy here. Yeehaw, let's get into it. 10 signs that you're getting better. Your first sign, you're losing more. And I know this is like weird, right? But follow me on this a little bit. Once you start to address some of the issues with your gameplay, you're gonna feel like, and you may actually be losing a little bit more until you sort of come through that dark valley of learning a new skill and emerge on the other side as a better player. One thing that I've noticed is, you know, when you're playing and you sort of have your flow and you know what you're doing, you're sort of hanging out here in this equilibrium, right? And then once you start to work on something, you sort of push this pendulum and you start getting these wild swings where you're doing really poorly, maybe you're doing a bit better, and then you'll kind of rest back on this equilibrium once you've developed this new skill and you'll have leveled yourself up essentially. But for a little while it can be a bit chaotic, right? Once you start to recognize something bad in your gameplay and you're starting to work on it, you can actually lose a few of the other things that you were doing well while you are developing this new skill. So once you start to open your eyes to a part of your play that is actually not working for you, like let's say you just haven't been particularly good about showing up to objectives with a Unite move, you might start to over focus on that, maybe farm a little too much, show up late to certain things, start to beat yourself up about it, and inevitably play a little bit worse for a while until you start to get the skill down and become better and better and better. So oddly enough, once you're getting better, you're gonna go through this phase of kind of being worse. Your second sign that you're getting better, you're more upset with your allies and your teammates. I mean, look, it is what it is. There isn't much to say about it. You will start to be more and more upset at the things that your allies are doing because they are doing things that you have now found out to be wrong and detrimental to the game. You are going to need to work on this, and some people don't really get bothered too much by this at all, but you'll start to notice more and more things that are happening in a match that are actually costing you games that are outside of your control. Of course, this is one of those things that we all deal with, and it's best to always try to figure out what you could do better. But there's no question there are times where it's hard not to tilt and freak out about something that's happening in a match that is way beyond your control. This is such a MOBA thing where you start to get mad at your teammates. Like, I'm sure other genres have things like this as well, but MOBAs, since the dawn of MOBAs and until MOBAs are gone, you will be irked by what your teammates are doing, and it gets worse as you get better. The third thing that you start doing when you get better is you start focusing less on your mechanics. And this is why for a lot of newer players, I would highly recommend picking a few Pokemon in maybe one or two roles, right? Probably two roles that you want to focus on and getting good with those so that you can start not worrying about the mechanical side of how they play and focusing a lot more on what you are doing inside of a match. And you'll notice when you're not really thinking too much about how your last hitting is working on Slowbro or the mechanics of how you're going to use your Unite move later in the match, you actually get to open your mind up to making broader gameplay macro decisions, not worrying about the micro moments in some of these fights. So you will start thinking less and less about the mechanics as you get better and better at the game. And that's kind of natural. It really goes hand in hand. Number 4, you get targeted more. Yes, you are going to be targeted more if you're doing well and playing well. It's a little tough because certain roles just naturally get targeted a lot, and certain Pokemon like Decidueye just naturally is a very, big target on the map. It's ironic because it's a sniper trying to hit the bullseyes, but it is a bullseye for the enemy team. And you will notice that the better you are playing, the more priority your opponents naturally will give you, right? If they see that you are a Greninja with 13 KOs on your team, and you also have a Dragapult that is not evolved yet to Dragapult, it's still level 8 or something like that, with 0 KOs, you're gonna get a lot more priority. It's just natural. When you are playing better, when you are a bigger threat, your enemies are going to focus you more. Number 5, you end up fighting more as a team. Even if you're not consciously aware of it, you just are more often in bigger fights and you aren't as scared to engage in these fights. You start to understand what your role is in these moments and you start to fight with a feeling of confidence. Even if you're not going to win the fight, you understand how you're going to provide great value for your team in some of these bigger engagements. So I do think the better you get, you start to stop, weird way to say that, hiding from your opponents, and you start to engaging more in direct, large-scale team fights. Number 6, you start focusing on finding value on the map rather than just fighting. So it's weird, I just talked about you're fighting more, and I do think you are, but I also think once you get better at the game, you start to recognize what actually has value in a moment and what doesn't. There are times, especially on the new Thea Sky Ruins Groudon, or the aka Thea Dry Ruins map, that scoring actually can take a huge priority over taking a fight. And you'll find opportunities where you think, yeah, I could go to this Reggie-Alecki fight, but we don't have a team assembled for it. We have no Unite moves. I don't think we're going to win this, but I do find value doing this on the map. I do find value sort of counter pushing on a goal zone, then basing to defend, or I do find value in securing. We have, all the Ndidis in the top and bottom. Someone needs to farm them up. You will find more opportunities for value that you can provide to your team as you get better and better, and you'll have less moments where you're just sort of wandering around. Which is my number 7. You have less moments where you're aimlessly doing things in a match. I do think when you're bad at something, this isn't just Pokemon Unite, this is anything, you could ask a player who's bad at things, well, what are you doing? What are you thinking about? What's your objective right now? And they won't have a great answer, but the better and better you get, you might not be consciously doing it at that point, but the better and better you get, you could articulate why you are doing what you're doing. And I do think that's a really important thing to think about when you're trying to get better, is to say, all right, why am I here right now? Not on this earth, by the way. You're here to hit that like and subscribe button. Could you imagine if that's how I tied it in? What you're doing in the match, you're trying to figure out, right, why you are doing what you're doing. And I do think this is a really important thing in anything, truthfully, but especially in a game, if you're trying to get better. Why are you at this objective? Do you think you could reasonably get it? Are you sacrificing yourself for a steal? Is there any potential of that? Are you going to win a fight here? Should you be farming right now? Should you be scoring right now? If you aren't doing that, why aren't you doing that? Once you start to get better, you will stop having moments of being aimless in a match. Number 8, you stop focusing on shiny objects. And when I talk about shiny objects, I do mean that there are things in the game and things in all games that almost feel like the golden ticket, like this is gonna be your salvation. Oh, don't you understand, you silly goose? Your big problem the entire time was that you weren't playing the right emblems. Oh, don't you get it? If only you were using your Drain Crown in these moments. It's the build that's the problem. And all of this is not entirely wrong. There are definitely things you can learn. There are maybe better builds you could be playing. I think more importantly than anything, it's understanding why you are playing, what you're playing, and how it works. But you start focusing less on those shiny objects and you focus more on your gameplay. Yes, it would be slightly better if your emblems were slightly better, but a lot of what is transpiring in the match means so much more than whether or not you're running a scope lens or a razor claw or a focus band. Like, those things are all great, and if you understand how it all works, that's fantastic, but the better you get, the less focused you are on those shiny objects. Number 9, you will then start to see some small results. So I talked earlier about how you're gonna have these pendulum swings and you might be playing worse for a little while, but you'll kind of move out of that. And you'll start to feel like you're doing better in matches. You'll gain that confidence back that maybe you had before that was unearned, and you'll probably at some point see that next hurdle, that next thing that you need to get good at and get back into a little bit of a chaotic state, but you'll start to get a little bit better. And you'll notice that your matches will go a little bit better. Everything will start feeling a little better. And let's say your win rate, I've had players that have messaged me and shown me when they started playing their game, they had like a 45% win rate, and they started, you know, watching some of my videos, streams, things like that, seeing some other creators, like watching the World Championships. They started taking notes from this and getting better, and they went from having a 45% win rate to now their account overall has like a 53% win rate. And that's like a hard hole to dig yourself out of, right? But you start to see that a little bit. Or one season, right? You're like, I've got a 50%, I've got a 48% win rate. Like, I'm not making a huge impact for my team. And then next season, you're trying something new, you're working on it, you're getting better, you're finding some Pokemon that maybe fit more with what you're doing, and all of a sudden, things are going a little bit better. Your overall win rate for that season is 55%. Like, you made a huge improvement, right? Just changing a few small things. And finally, number 10, you start to feel a little embarrassed about your old gameplay and some of the things that you've done. And don't get me wrong, we all like play bad at times. Like, I played this game a lot, but there are still some matches where it's like, wow, I really misplayed in that moment. I could have done a lot better. But you will start to recognize that where you were is a lot different from where you are, or at least where you are going as you are progressing and getting better. And then you'll go, oh no, I was the Greninja that hid in the bush at Zapdos. Like, you'll start to recognize those moments. Like, I was a Reddit bush Cinderace. And then you'll start to see like, oh, I changed. I got a lot better. And now I kind of look at myself with a little bit of like, that's a shame that I did that, but I'm glad that I'm working and getting a little stronger at this. I hope this helped. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. These are all signs that you're getting better, even though at times it can feel like, man, maybe I'm playing a little bit worse. Love you guys. Let me know what I missed in the comments. I'll see y'all next time. We did it.